Pleasure to be with you today. How does it feel to be back home at Hershey?
It's been a little bit of a whirlwind to get here. Not gonna lie. It's a great culture, great company. That the opportunities of what we're creating. I know it sounds all crazy. It's a chocolate company, but we do a lot more than that. The town is surrounded by a school system that our founder put through his trust, and the amount of underprivileged children that get an opportunity at a greater life and school opportunities. And the town is just a really great, rich, historical place that feels really good to kind of just settle in and sit there and play a role.
Absolutely. Not to mention amusement parks as well, correct?
A lot of candy, a lot of amusement parks. My kids have fun.
Great. So we've known each other for a few years and did business a few years ago when we were both on Hershey, and you're back. And of course, I had to do a little bit of LinkedIn stalking before we sat down today. And in looking at your LinkedIn resume, you've truly rounded out your experience. You've so much experience at different companies in operations, audience, programmatic, leading digital strategy, and investment, and then bringing it back to Hershey. And how do you feel that this has positioned you for success at Hershey? Because a lot of us would like to know, because we're all trying to round out our resume in a way that makes us successful in our future endeavors.
I think a good part of that is that I've been in all your shoes, and I can understand, when we talk to our agency partners, I understand some of their challenges and what they're going through. I've been in the vendor side shoes. I understand, what you're trying to do, and I know you're one part of the equation, but I look at you all as part of my equation. So I understand the different sides of it to have honest conversations. I think the agency one probably strikes the best because I understand the challenges that they go through, and they're constantly put at, all the press is like, the agencies are challenged and everyone should go in-house. And I don't think that's a fair assessment. I think the talent gaps across the industry are crazy. I don't think it's anybody's fault per se, but I think the agencies get the brunt of that. And I don't think it's a fair assessment because I do think there's some great work coming out of all the agencies out there. We have a great partner in Horizon. They do incredible work for us. They push us every day. We push them and they adapt. And, we have a really good relationship. But all agencies, I think, are trying to stay ahead. But it's a challenging space right now. It's a challenging world to put them on such a pedestal. So for me, I feel the pain that they go through, and I can actually, have a really good purview for them to lean on and be a partner to.
As being a partner of yours, it absolutely shows in the questions that you ask in being in all of these previous roles. So that's nice. Hershey has an enormous portfolio, both legacy brands like candy, mint, and gum, and the newer brands of the salty snack division. How do you ensure your brands remain relevant, especially for Gen Z and millennials?
It's probably the hardest part of our job right now. We've got, everybody knows Reese's. It's like the easiest thing. You can just show an orange banner and it's like Reese's peanut butter cups everywhere. But we've got a lot of legacy brands who do a lot of, great sales for us still, but they're edging into the 50 plus range of adults. So how do we bring them down a bit? I think of Almond Joy and Mounds. Not a lot of people love coconut, but it's an older demographic. We've got, a lot of our legacy Kit Kat used to be like kids love Kit Kat, but now it's trying to age down from where it is. Those kids are trending older now. We also look at is how do they go through our portfolio stages? So as we think about all the new snacking brands we just unlocked, we just integrated but purchased about 4 years ago, Pirate's Booty, Skinny Pop, Dots Pretzels. And how do you look at those through the journey? So my kids, I'm sure everyone's kids raise their hand and say, everyone loves Pirate's Booty at that age. Mm-hmm. But when they all of a sudden stop eating Pirate's Booty, where do they go next? Is it candy? Is it Skinny Pop? Do they go to something else? So how do we start understanding our portfolio, how it works better together versus separately as brands? That'll probably be, when we think about the relevancy of age and the consumer trends that we're seeing, we don't have an influencer strategy, but should we? And I think what we're focused on is how do we find the right influencers? I don't mean go get Kim Kardashian to promote Skinny Pop. I mean, go after, the moms out there that are promoting Pirate's Booty as part of lunches and, really feel our brand integrated into people's everyday lives. But it's hard to do right now with that age group. There's differences between all of their eating habits and it changes fast.
It does. Absolutely. We have a lot of Pirate's Booty in my house. And
Everyone does.
I'm the one that eats it all. But yeah, we do use it for the kids' snacks. What's your favorite product?
Reese's Take 5. By far, if you've never had one, grab one. It will be the best thing you ate.
Amazing. Love it. So since I work in social media, I do have to ask you this question. How do you view social platforms in the space as it pertains to a holistic media strategy? There's a lot going on in the industry.
There is a lot going on. I think, it all depends on the platforms and where they fit. I think there's a portion where we look at it is this all video? Video is a very loose term, but if I'm on, whether it be Instagram or Snap or TikTok, like those are video centric channels. YouTube is all included in there. I don't really think of that as social, but in the end, all of those are a video relevant place. So social in general, we don't even like to use the term social because we're not looking to buy it as like a social platform. We're looking to do it where reach is, where eyeballs are, where they're consuming, a lot of content at any given point. But it plays a pivotal role as we think about what our total media strategy is. At the end of the day, we have an audience that we're going after. This year is the first year we've led audience first, not channel first. It will be the first year all of our brands adopted an audience first approach to all of our media planning. So if they show up in social or not, at the end of the day, we're just looking for where you are at any given point. So channels aside, we have a good audience base, but also within channel, how do you win within those platforms too?
Right.
Is it just showing a 6-second ad? Or is it really looking at the custom integrations and really making sure that your brand stands out? A lot of people always say you want to be the finger stopping creative. How do you get to the point of where everyone's scrolling and they stop to see you? And that's a really important aspect. And that's where I go back to, how do you marry the left brain and the right brain back together? The art and the science that we always talk about. But I think media and creative has kind of disseminated a little bit over the last few years. But how do you bring that back together using data to infuse what tells you the consumer behavior and how to be best present as a brand in front of them?
Absolutely. It's so important to look at the data. And I love that you're using the word pivotal when you're describing all of this.
And no, we don't buy on Twitter.
Was never going to ask that. A lot of good friends that work there. So this could be a misconception, but the consensus is that TV budgets continue to shift. And there is a significant reallocation to digital and RMNs. Do you see that budgets are shifting? Or can you talk about it? And how do you decide where to allocate?
Our budget shifting, yes, but I think it also is how you define TV. I think as an industry, we've loosely used that term as only linear, and it's not, it's a screen. I use this often. I always say, when you sit down at night with your significant other, your kids, your family, whoever, do you look at them and say, what do you want to watch tonight, linear or streaming?
Exactly.
No.
No.
You say, do you want to watch the game? Do you want to watch whatever's on Netflix? Whatever you're looking to do, really prime time is anytime. It doesn't matter what it is, and it's on the same screen. So we look at it that way versus, are we moving money out of our linear upfronts? Yes, but it's not because of the upfronts, quote unquote. It's because consumption habits have changed, but we're buying more in TV than we've been in years past. It's just being bought differently. So we have to stop thinking about it in that sense. I think that's where our industry kind of gets tripped up a little bit over ourselves, where we think about TV is dead. It's not. It's actually been the most consumed screen in everybody's house. So are those dollars going elsewhere? Of course they are, but a lot are going into streaming elements of television. Are they going into RMNs, retail media networks, and another ad network? They are, and we can probably talk about that for days. I don't think a lot of the dollars are actually shifting from linear to that yet. To be quite honest, I think you're seeing more programmatic digital dollars shifting there because it's an easy, low-hanging fruit transition. And then you look at on-site versus off-site and how you kind of balance those two things.
Yeah, I would have to agree. You really don't go home and say, let's watch streaming or linear. But
we as an industry ask that question every day.
Exactly. But do you watch more streaming or more linear these days?
I do not have any cable subscription, although I shouldn't say that. It's a video cable subscription. We have YouTube TV, but we don't have any cable boxes in our house. I probably predominantly watch more streaming and more content versus sports.
Interesting. I watch a lot of sports too.
Yeah.
So hot topic alert. This has come up a lot. RMNs. Retailers have been forced to broaden their online presence, given the rise in e-com driven by the pandemic and consumer behavior shifts. And we're seeing a lot of dollars being reallocated to RMNs. What's your thought on RMNs in the marketplace?
I've got some thoughts I probably won't share, but we'll leave it there. But, at the end of the day, they are our biggest customers. I heard Campbell's talking about it earlier. They are, no matter what, our products are sold in their stores. They are winning our shelf space in store, on digital shelf space as well, but they are a huge part of our business. So we can't just turn aside. But I think at the other end of the side of this is they're kind of forcing us into things that don't necessarily make sense for our business. So if you're going to upcharge anywhere from $1 to $3 in a data cost or a CPM, you better perform 3 times better. If you don't, then we look at you holistically within media. We have to hold you just as accountable as we do for all of our other media partners. And if we don't look at it that way, you're just kind of forcing money for no reason as a business. So it's been a balance for us. We've actually pushed more of a performance-based JBP with a lot of our partners, where their next level of investment throughout the year will unlock based on hitting goals. So instead of just saying, yep, we're committing $20 million, they've got to hit certain tiers to get to those levels of money based on the actual performance of our holistic media investment, which I think has held them a little bit accountable. They've all leaned in. They've done a great job partnering with us there. But I think the next big unlock is really just thinking of it. We've overcomplicated it. As an ad network or a media network or whatever we want to call it. It's either on-site or audience extension. Use your audience anywhere or work on-site. And I think that's where we have to kind of simplify this. We've got to win on the digital shelf, no doubt. How do we do that? But then we also would love to know who's been buying our products in your stores, not on shelf, and how do we find them elsewhere? Our product does not ship well, it melts. So we're not as commerce driven online versus click to collect. We're seeing more of that trend. So Amazon doesn't play a huge part of our business side, but we do work with them in a media environment. But how do you bring those two things together? Whereas Walmart is a huge part of our business, and we're trying to find the best way to partner with them is not just thinking of them as another media channel, but how do we unlock data sharing? What does that all look like? Those are probably the keys for us as we think about this space evolving.
Absolutely. Definitely a lot of challenges, but a lot of positive to come out of it as well.
How are you working with them?
We'll discuss that another time. So in terms of measurement, working at a longstanding successful CPG company, you guys are revolutionizing the way you measure effectiveness. There's been a lot of conversations about this. How do you think it should be measured? And what's the best way for platforms to prove value to Hershey or in general?
I think how it should be measured should be whatever works for that brand at that given moment in that given category. I don't think there should be a one size fits all anymore in this industry. I think the fact that we thought perfect was a 40,000 household panel for 60 years is still baffling. And I think we've evolved. We're starting to evolve past that, but there'll never be a single currency that we transact on because every brand has a different KPI or a different outcome that they're going after. So for us, we're trying to identify what is that KPI. It's not easy because you've got 25 different brands who have different goals, different business metrics to hit. But we as an organization at the end of the day are just driving the Hershey company's bottom line. So how do we find the commonality of what that KPI is? And then what's the best way to measure it? That's also probably the most challenging part of our jobs right now across every media leader in this space. The measurement can be done 800 different ways, and every single one turns out to be the best. So it's what's right, what's wrong. But we've been pretty leaned into a lot of our partnership with the agency and building, a performance report off of identity versus off of purchasers. So using that, actually tying it to exposed media in near real time, give or take, has allowed us to optimize a lot smarter, has allowed us to really move our dollars into the right places in the right moments. We're working every day to get it better. It's a part of the whole pie of what's happening across the industry, but it's definitely making us smarter and better, but it's a constant evolution for us.
Absolutely. Definitely a challenge to get through sometimes. How do you feel about the new changes in iOS, or not so new, app tracking looming, the looming Chrome updates, and how it's going to change the landscape? Are you guys thinking about that a lot? Is it something that comes up often?
It does. When we look at our ID matches and when we go into our buying ecosystem, of course, it's a hot topic, especially with the social platforms, which I think are having more of the in-app challenges to match to our audiences on iOS.
Absolutely.
That's the given nature of where the industry is. So we have to keep an eye on what that looks like and how we keep trying to win there. Other areas, it's certainly something that we're thinking about, but at the end of the day, we're completely removed from a cookie-based approach anyway. I also think the way that we buy is finding relevant audiences across household identity. Now, if IP address goes away in the future, which it very well could in the near future, we'll have to reassess at some of those points. But I think it's a mix. It's actual audience targeting. We've got geo-based targeting. We've got contextual-based. And using all three of them together create a much richer media ecosystem versus one or another.
Yeah, absolutely. You're definitely, with the geo-based, you're definitely reaching a lot more of your audience in specific markets, especially for Hershey. With all the headwinds we've faced as an industry, where would you place your bets at this time?
Any measurement company trying to solve any of our challenges right now, because I think it's probably the hottest topic for everyone, is how do I measure the outcome? How do I measure the effectiveness? We are a historical CPG. We use MMM like it's our Bible. The fact of the matter is, though, I was talking to somebody earlier, I said in October of this year, we just got our full year 2021 readout. I'm almost done planning 23. So how does that help me? So clearly there's gaps, there's challenges in how that model's been run. So really solving measurement, and it will never be perfect. It will never be solved in a perfect manner. But I think leaning in, we're super leaning in right now to doing in-house analytics. Analytics to us is way more important than any media buying in-housing or any of that, because we are trying to get closer to what's driving the business. We use analytics to actually do our commercial plan every year. So that's where we're constantly trying to stay ahead, I think, and understand how does media inform our commercial plan, which then drives the bottom line revenue over time. But there's no perfect science to it. And media doesn't solve every problem as much as everyone thinks it does. It does not at this stage.
Definitely. Do you think creative lends a hand to that? Media,
I do.
I do. I think bringing them back together.
I do. And it depends on the brand. Reese's can sell itself. It's not that hard. I get it. But some brands, you need to build your brand. 6 seconds won't do that. You need to build who you are, what your identity is, and it won't be at national scale at first, potentially. But how do you tell a story? We've got something that I think we lack, and something we've been talking about a lot this year is, again, our founder has done so much philanthropic work across the community, the school systems. We don't even talk about it. And it's not to put it on a pedestal, but it's the things that people don't see. But I also think it's the things that are culturally relevant and really have people want to be a part of your brand or want to eat and consume your brand. So it goes both ways, but creative does play a really big role. I think no matter how big or small the brand is, you still have a story to tell. And if you lose sight of that, every consumer just becomes a data point or a purchaser, and you start to lose the fidelity of them over time. And I think that's where we're trying to rebuild. What does that look like? Again, that creative and media coming back together is really important.
Yeah, it's smart. What macro trends do you see sticking in 2023?
Cookies will still be here. I think right now we're just in a constant evolution and transformation as an industry. I think there's going to be things that stick. There's going to be things that don't. There's going to be things we learn along the way. And I think if you're not open or have thick skin to just test your way through all of these new things that are happening, you're in the wrong industry at this stage. Because I don't think any one thing is going to stick. And again, one thing that sticks for me may not work for some other brand in some other category. So I think for me, the biggest thing that we're leaned into, and that is going to be a common theme for us, is both simplify the complexity of the entire industry, but then also really just lean into testing everywhere, every which way, and celebrate all of our failures, not celebrate our wins, celebrate our failures. What do we learn from that and win after will be really important.
It seems like moving into 2023, authenticity will take a prioritization over perfection.
there's no more perfect.
Yeah.
There just isn't. And if there's people out there waiting for perfection, they're going to be waiting a long time because I don't think it's going to come anytime soon.
Absolutely. And definitely waiting for the economy to get back on its feet. In terms of privacy, what are you thinking about in the space today and where you're going? So how are you thinking about privacy in the future state of Hershey? Because it's definitely a conversation that comes up a lot with many marketers.
For us, it's constant communication with the partners, from the data partners that we're partnered with, that we're sharing data with. At the end of the day, we're not out there collecting PII. We're not asking people for their information at scale. We've done little bits here and there, but it's not something that we've done at full scale because at the end of the day, a lot of people give you a fake email to get a free chocolate bar. Like, it's just reality, and it's not something that we need to really go after. I think our chase has been what our second party data partnerships. How do we partner with the retailers? So you think about privacy, it's who's got the liability at the end of the day on that stuff. How do we ensure we're all protected? Because again, I don't care who bought me. I just care that I know that I talked to them and they bought me. So we have to stay ahead of it constantly as we think about the ID space. Again, I bring up IP address. We use that a lot. Our business is measured by household penetration. So when we think about how we buy media, it's targeted to an IP and it's strapped back to the household. And then we look at that in ways off of our individual identities. But if that goes away, then what? So we have to constantly stay ahead and just keep learning, as we all are. I think the biggest challenge is the fact that it's going state by state versus across the U.S., but we'll learn our way through it, I think, across all those multiple states. It's not a closed book. It's not an open-ended conversation at this stage right now.
Exactly. I think we're coming up on time soon. But if we were sitting here 1 year from now and you could name any accomplishment that you've achieved over the past year, what would it be? Personally or professionally?
Oh, that's it's a different level. One of my biggest goals just from an organizational standpoint is to have our entire infrastructure in place. And what I mean by that, that's people. We're building quite a big team with a lot of new business units coming, but it's also our entire infrastructure of data. And for us, as I mentioned, bringing analytics in-house, that's a 12, 18, 24-month job to get the right infrastructure in place so that all these things we're talking about doing, the perfect measurement, the KPIs, you can't do that if you don't have your infrastructure or your house in place. So that's probably, I'm hoping, 12 months away. But it's probably the biggest focus of our team and really across our enterprise of getting the infrastructure right to really inform a holistic investment approach to our entire business.
Excellent. Well, we'll check that out in a year and we'll see, right? If you had a motto for 2023, what would it be?
Simplify the complex.
I like it.
I have two for my team this year. That's one. And the other one is outsmart, not outspend the marketplace. Outsmart, not outspend. Don't throw money at a problem.
That's a good answer to have. Mine would be keep a positive mental attitude because in this space, it can definitely get a little discouraging at points.
Yeah.
But still a lot of fun.
I don't know if we're opening up to questions.
I don't know. Are we opening it up to questions?
Yeah.
This is a great time to do that. All right. We only have time for one or two. I'll keep it short. Julie Saxon, CRO Weather. First off, thank you for making me feel old because Kit Kat's my favorite. But I have a question around dot pretzels because I have 13 and 15-year-old girls. And just out of curiosity, this brand became really popular in my house. And it was like this, we have to get them. It became almost like a status symbol of the cool snack. Tell us a little bit more about that.
They spend $0 in media.
Well, then
literally $0 we've spent.
Then that's very cool. But like, where did the coolness of the brand come from? Like, how did it come out of nowhere?
Months, it's very regionalized in the South, moving into the Northeast. It's honestly, it's almost like nobody can explain the growth that they've
Well, they're delicious.
They're incredible. If you haven't had, there's a new one out that's
and not cheap.
They're not cheap. Nothing is anymore. But there's a new one out that's cinnamon, and they're like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. If you've never had them, find them. They're incredible. But you're right. It's a brand. Literally, it's almost a case study. We've never spent $1 in media. Next year we will. We've got a regionalized approach where we're trying to focus on new areas. But to spend $0, our growth is over 90% year over year right now.
Well, with 13 to 15-year-old girls in Atlanta, they're very popular.
Well, I love it. Love to hear it.
What is their target audience?
They don't even have like these. This is all the work we're trying to do right now, but it's like, don't touch what's not broken at the end of the day. It's exploded so much, but they're so regionalized in an area that it's not necessarily the core consumer that we've learned yet. There's parts that we have. There's a certain demographic, but they're just as a snack. As pretzels go, they're really
Go buy them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen these in LA. Maybe
They're not in LA.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Not yet.
Maybe someone
Not
can
yet.
mail some to me in LA. One more question. All right.
Adam Pyatt at Live Intent. Vinny, nice to see you
Adam.
again. What does an audience first approach look like for Hershey's? That's tough being a CPG brand that doesn't have a wealth of first party data. But what does that look like for you guys, and what are you doing to tackle that?
It's funny you asked that. The person who built it's actually sitting right in front of me. We've built out, a pretty robust engine through data partnerships, a lot of it through second and third party data partnerships to identify purchasers on a unique ID basis, and then really built out a framework of how each brand operates. Think of retention acquisition as a strategy. We've got the data behind it to use to go target those people within real time across those different parts of their priority list. It's really spend levels that we think about. But it's in a good place. We're continually building it. We're probably at about 80 plus million unique IDs, one-to-one, that have a purchase tied to them. And we're able to have exposed IDs and actually do closed loop reporting on those IDs. So it's a constant evolution of that. 80 is hopefully going to double in the next few months, but it's hard. We're not collecting. We don't own the end game. Again, we can't ship our product very well because it melts. So we don't have that one-to-one relationship in most environments. So we rely heavily on those partnerships to build that ID strategy out.
All right. Well, let's hear it for
Thank you.
Vinny.
Thanks,
and Jill.
Vinny.